Good morning. I am truly and deeply humbled for the privilege I have to speak with you here this morning on this day that we honor the memory of those who gave their lives in the service and defense of our nation. For all of who've gathered here, whether your connection is through the personal loss of someone close or simply a grateful American paying tribute, thank you for coming, for showing up, and for caring. Everyone has their unique perspective on Memorial Day. For me, it is the most bittersweet of our national holidays. In a very real way, every day is Memorial Day. Not a day goes by that I don't think of the friends I've lost. Yet on this annual day of observance, I'm comforted to know that our nation still takes time out to honor their memory and their sacrifices. This past Thursday morning, I joined about 24 of my fellow members of Congress, veterans of all branches of our military, to wash the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the wall, on our National Mall in Washington. Our bipartisan four-country caucus, it's a group of veterans from both sides of the aisle who just share the common experience of having worn the nation's uniform. We do this every year before we fly home to our districts for Memorial Day weekend. The wall is the most personal of the DC memorials for me because I was there in the fall of 1982, in November of 1982, when the wall was dedicated. It was one of the most moving experiences of my life and why ceremonies and memorials to our fallen heroes are so special to me. It's hard to remember or hard to think that at the time in 1982, the Vietnam War had officially only been over for about 7 years. The last of the casualties, most had ended by 73. It was still fresh, and I'll never forget the way the country rallied and pulled those folks together. But it's a different type of observance. As I was just speaking with one of the park memorial folks last week, he said, we have different types of celebrations in DC around these memorials, and they're all uniquely different. He said for the World War II memorial, at this point with the few remaining we have of the greatest generation, it's celebratory. The Korean War, often known as the Forgotten War, didn't get a lot of attention, but over the years, the Korean government has embraced our American veterans, and that's taken on a different significance as those remaining survivors continue to get on up in age, and we have fewer and fewer. The Vietnam Memorial, though, he said, is different. He said every year it still brings a different type of tension that you just don't feel with the others, because that monument, as they went on to explain, really represents a scar in our nation's history and an effort through that memorial to heal that scar. And for those who have not been, I see a lot of veterans I know in the group there. If you've never taken an honor flight, a flight to honor, as we do it here in Polk County, we'd love to have you go there. You deserve that recognition, and I can assure you there's a healing process associated with that would definitely be worth your time. After washing the wall, I was able to show my friend, Congressman Jack Bergman, a retired Marine 3-star general, who happens to be the most senior active duty or military officer to ever serve in Congress. He's from Michigan. I showed him the name of my plebe summer roommate's father, Scott Graustein, Robert Scott Graustein. Lieutenant Commander Graustein was a 1961 graduate of the Naval Academy and captain of both the football and basketball teams. His A-6 Intruder was shot down on December 21st, 1972, during the Christmas bombings that turned out to be the final campaign of the Vietnam War. He was one of the last Americans killed in the war, though his status was presumed KIA because no parachutes were seen after his jet was destroyed by a surface-air missile. And the way the wall works, if you've been there, it starts chronologically on the right end, beginning with the first casualties, proceeds to the middle, then goes back out to the left side and proceeds to the middle again, so that those who meet at the center are the very first and the very last casualties of the war. Robert Graustein's name is right in the dead center, towards the bottom on the left center panel, indicating he was one of the last killed. My Academy roommate, Scott Graustein, was only 8 years old when his father was shot down. So for 13 years, he lived with the uncertainty of his father's fate, until thankfully his remains were discovered in 1985 and positively identified. Because we never forget our fallen, Scott now has closure, and his family has closure. Personally, I come from a long lineage of service members with ancestors who fought in every American conflict, even predating the country, when my sixth great-grandfather, John Franklin, served under the command of then Lieutenant Colonel George Washington in the French and Indian War. on through the decades, the generations. My grandfather was then one of 5 brothers who fought in World War II. It's what you did. Everyone fought. They represented all the services just within our family. His brother Ben was one of in the first wave of the 82nd Airborne Paragliders, the 319th Paraglider Regiment, to land behind enemy lines at Normandy, and was later killed at Bastogne during the Battle of the Bulge. I'll have an opportunity later in June to visit that cemetery there at Bastogne as part of my work that we do on the VA committee. But the horrors of that war, along with the loss of his brother, left impressions on my grandfather that I don't think he ever really got over. But they didn't talk about that in that generation. They simply sucked it up and got over it, and that was not the right thing to do. And I know it impacted his life for the rest of the time he had with us. The first-hand connection of loss of life didn't occur for me like that until after I graduated from the Naval Academy and was still in flight school in Pensacola. Ensign Greg McMichael was the first in my class to die in the line of duty when he and his instructor spun their T-34 aircraft into the ground. We had all just been at Pensacola Beach 3 days before on the weekend, celebrating our class finally taken to the skies to earn our wings. And here we already had suffered a loss. My class from 1986 from Annapolis has lost 8 members in the line of duty. 7 of those died in aircraft crashes, including the last, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Green, whose Cobra attack helicopter was took ground fire in Iraq in 2004. It was a stray sniper round that came through the canopy and shot him and killed him instantly. Just prior to that, though, Commander Bill Donovan was killed by an airplane when terrorists from American Airlines Flight 77 flew into his office at the Pentagon on September 11th. Since the only members of my class still on active duty are now Navy admirals or Marine Corps generals, it's unlikely we'll lose any others from my class in the line of duty, thankfully. In addition to my academy classmates, though, there were more than 24 others with whom I served that died in aircraft crashes. Surprisingly, of the nearly 40 friends I lost during my time of service, only 2 died in combat from enemy fire. The rest occurred during training missions in peacetime. I've also lost 3 shipmates to suicide after leaving the service, who tragically saw no other way out from the pain they suffered than to take their own lives. Those are tragic losses and some of the very toughest, and we must do everything we can to prevent that. My point in sharing all that is that unless they live near a base or have a family member who served, most Americans are blissfully ignorant of the sacrifices our service members and their families make day in and day out to keep our country safe. Yes, we rightfully honor the heroism of all those who fought valorously and sacrificed on the battlefield. They deserve that. And not a but, and we must also honor those who gave their lives in peacetime service to provide the blanket of freedom and protection under which we all sleep. As a member of Congress, I've served on the House Armed Services Committee. Now I'm on the Veterans Affairs and Appropriations Committees. The memory of my friends pushes me every day to keep fighting for our country. They fell while carrying the flag in our quest to protect and defend freedom, and it's my daily prayer that I will do right by them to add meaning and purpose to their sacrifice. As President Abraham Lincoln said so eloquently in his Gettysburg Address, it is rather for us here to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. May God bless our fallen and their families. May God bless America. Thank you.